Good morning everyone. I'm Ankit. You're watching StudyIQ IAS English and today is 13th of September. So as a result, we are going to understand important news and articles from the Indian Express newspaper. Now let us start our today's discussion by understanding the first and probably the most important article in our today's newspaper, that is about the PM's visit to the violence-torn state of Manipur. Now you need to understand Manipur has been under extreme violence for more than 2 years now. And for the first time since this violence erupted, Prime Minister is going on an official visit to Manipur. Now, whenever Prime Minister of a country goes to a violence-torn area in the country, you need to understand he or she might only go whenever there is a possibility of peace. So, we are going to understand what are the key issues that needs to be addressed before you can imagine the peace that will be spreading over the state of Manipur. So, the first article is first of all important from governance perspective. It is also important from internal security perspective, right? So the relevant paper here becomes GS paper 2 as well as GS paper 3. In the second article, we are going to understand why is RBI trying to reduce its holding of US government's treasury securities. Now you have to understand, whenever government of India issues bonds, those are called as government securities. Similarly, whenever government of United States issues a bond, those are called as treasury securities. These can be long-term and short-term securities. We are going to understand what are the reasons behind why the RBI is trying to reduce the amount of foreign securities, especially of the government security of US, that it holds as a part of its forex reserve, right? So this article directly relates to economy as well as the development relating to external sector. So it's a core economy topic. In the third article, we are going to understand what are offshore aquifers. Now, aquifers are basically storage of waters. So, what these offshore aquifers are, how they help in storage of water, and what is the significance of these offshore aquifers, especially in the need where water demand day by day is increasing, be it for agriculture, be it for industrial, be it for human consumption process, right? So, in that regard, offshore aquifers become a very important topic as far as UPSC Prelims is concerned. And the relevant topic here is GS paper 1 because it is a subject from geography. In the fourth article, we are going to understand a very important historical figure in the South India known as Sri Narayana Guru. Why are we discussing Sri Narayana Guru? Because recently his birth anniversary, it was celebrated in India and Prime Minister Modi also paid his respect to the historical figure. So he is important from modern history, therefore the relevant paper becomes automatically again GS paper 1. Similarly, we are also going to cover another very important historical figure in India, that was Acharya Vinoba Bhave. Please let me know where have you heard this name Acharya Vinoba Bhave. Please let me know. Now we are going to understand about him, what were his achievement, what was his philosophy. He rightly so followed very closely with the principles of Mahatma Gandhi, right? So we are going to understand about Acharya Vinoba Bhave. This again is a topic relevant from post-India independence, also from modern India perspective. So GS paper 1 is the relevant topic. And in the last article, if the time permits, we are going to understand the process of extradition. Extradition is a process where you formally request another country to send the person who might have violated laws in your country, right? So what are the legalities behind this extradition process? Why is extradition process in use? What are the challenges in execution of these kind of measures? Everything we are going to cover in our today's discussion. Now you need to understand 6 articles may span over a period of 1 hour. So what I'll do, whatever is left today, I will record the video separately and get it uploaded, right? So don't need to worry. The last part is important from GS paper 2 perspective. It deals with matters relating to international relation because extradition is a process between 2 different countries. So these are the 6 articles we are going to cover. How's the weekend going? Yes, Santwana, correct. Good morning, all of you. Augustine, let me see, give me a second. Yashi, Jui, Mahamim, Santwana, Yashi, Gaurav, Santwana, good morning. Yes, Santwana, individual satyagraha, yes, that is correct. Now you know the drill. The notes of this session will be available on the Telegram channel, ATS Live, so you don't have to go anywhere. Just go to this channel, you can download the notes, and the ones who haven't subscribed it yet, please also go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Now, we'll start with the first article. This appeared in the Explain section of our today's newspaper. And we are going to talk about the Prime Minister Modi's visit to the violence-torn state, that is the Manipur. What are the five key issues that still plagues the state, because of which the violence, although has been reduced but has not been eliminated from the state? So we are going to understand the issues that plague the society of Manipur in total in our today's discussion. Now the context is Prime Minister Narendra Modi will fly to Manipur today and will interact with internally displaced people in the two districts of Churachandpur as well as Imphal. Imphal is the capital of Manipur, and this will be the first time Prime Minister Modi is visiting the state since the onset of the ethnic violence that happened between two communities in the region, that is Meiteis. Meiteis are usually the ones who live in valley in and around Imphal. Similarly, there are tribes known as Kuki-Zo tribes, and their community, they live in the hill tracts of the state. So the violence that is happening is between these two groups, and this has happened for more than 2 years now, because it began in May 2023, right? So what are the issues that still plagues that we are going to discuss? First of all, let me tell you, where is Manipur located? We all know Manipur is a part of India located in the northeastern part of the country. Now, Manipur, Arunachal, Nagaland and Mizoram, these are the four countries that also share its boundary with another country known as Myanmar. And there is an implementation of what is known as free movement regime. We have already covered free movement regime, right? Anyone have a doubt what is a free movement regime? So these are the four states that borders Myanmar. Manipur is one of them. And in Manipur also, like other states, free movement regime has been made applicable. So what is free movement regime, and why is free movement regime creating problems for the government to control the violence? That we'll understand today. Okay. Now the background you need to understand is very essential to get behind this article. First of all, in the last 27 months since the violence has started in Manipur, few developments have happened. First of all, there has been earlier prolonged periods of violence, and it led to displacement of members of the community, be it Meiteis, be it the Kuki-Zo communities. Similarly, this violence resulted into collapse of law and order in the region. Now, there is a theory that says, there's a political theory that states state is in a control only when it has a power to police the people. Now imagine a situation where there is no power of police to control the violence. So do you think rule of law would be applicable in the region? Obviously no. So it led to collapse of law and order. Similarly, it also led to strengthening of armed groups. Both of these two sides in the conflict, Meiteis on one hand and Kuki and Zo on another, groups of people in these communities have gotten themselves armed, and because of their self-arming, it has led to further increase in the violence rather than reduction of the violence. Also, we saw in 2024, in the months of summer, Lok Sabha election happened in Manipur, even despite this violence. In addition to that, this year only, in the months of February, there was imposed a president's rule in the state of Manipur after the resignation of the earlier Chief Minister of Manipur, who came from Meitei community, and it was alleged by the members of Kuki-Zo community that the earlier chief minister was not able to control the violence. So rightly so, he resigned from power. But since no other government was able to form, so central government imposed president's rule in the state. President's rule is a part of constitution mentioned in Article 356. Okay. Recently, there has been a positive development that there has been somewhat a gradual reduction in the violence. Ebb means reduction, flow means increase, right? So gradual ebb in the violence means gradual reduction in the violence, and because of this, you can imagine now Prime Minister is visiting the state of Manipur. Anyone from Manipur? Good morning, Rishi. Now, what are the key issues that still plague the society of Manipur? We'll discuss it one by one. Anyone from Manipur? Nope, no one today. Now, rehabilitation of displaced population is the first issue that plagues the society of Manipur. Now, you need to understand, whenever violence breaks down in a particular area, it leads to displacement of people on a mass scale, right? So, to house these displaced people, the government has set up 280 relief camps, which houses, you can imagine how many people, more than 57,000 people, and these people have been categorized as internally displaced persons or IDPs. Now, these displaced people are of two categories. First of all, a member living or belonging from a community which is minority in the region. Suppose if there is a Kuki-Zo member who is living in Imphal. Imphal is a Methi majority area. So those people would obviously suffer violence and therefore they would be displaced. Similarly, Methi people who might be living in hill tracts near to the Kuki-Zo community areas, they might have felt violence. So these are also internally displaced people. So this is the first category of internally displaced people. Second category are the people who live on fringe areas. Fringe areas means periphery. So there is a possibility that in a Methi dominated area on the peripheries, they might be from Kuki-Zo community. Similarly, vice versa is also true. So this is the second type of people who are internally displaced. Now both of these people are housed in the displacement camps which was been set up by the government in order to provide safe refuge to it. Now earlier, before the onset of violence, again the government has planned to resettle back these refugees. Now to calm down the situation, what you need to do, that people should move back to their homes. This is the first situation where a situation becomes calm down. Now what happens is that government came up with a three-phase plan which was to wind down the relief camps and resettle the people back into their homes. Now the priority was given to help resettle displaced people from the fringe areas first, because this was an easier process. What you do, you pick down the lowest hanging fruit, and this was for the government the lowest hanging fruit. Later on, whenever the situation allowed, the government planned that we will also resettle those who are belonging from hostile majority regions in a prefabricated house. Why prefabricated house? Because there were many instances that the people's houses were burned. So government wanted to construct the houses and allow them to resettle. But despite many people, as much as there has been report that 5,000 people have been resettled, but still the progress, you need to understand, has been very slow. How many are the people who have been displaced? Close to 57,000. And how many have returned? Almost 5,000. So how many are remaining? Roughly around 52,000, which is a lot of number, right? So this is the first problem associated with the Manipur, that is we still haven't been able to rehabilitate the displaced people from their homes, right? Second problem is the free movement and buffer zone. Now in India, there is a freedom of you to move to any part of the country, right? That is covered under Article 19 of the Constitution. Now, whenever violence broke down in Manipur, what happened that the free movement of people belonging from one community did not used to happen from into areas where people live there belonging to another community. For example, Kuki-Zo community, they live in hill tracts, right? So they were not able to freely move to the areas of valley which is dominated by Methi population. Similarly, Methi population live in valleys, so they were not able to move freely in the hill areas of the Manipur because they were dominated by Kuki-Zo community, and this led to creation of buffer zones. That to separate these two warring communities, the government set up a buffer zone where there was deployment of security agencies, and the consequence of this has been faced in the entire economy of Manipur. Now, for example, most of the highways that are constructed in Manipur, they are in and around the hill regions. So whenever these hill regions, they dominated by Kuki-Zo community, so members of Methi community, they can't access highways. So this is the first problem. Another problem is that members of Kuki-Zo community who are living in hills, they require services that are available in a valley region like Imphal a lot. For example, Imphal is the capital of Manipur, which has access to airport, hospitals and markets. So Kuki-Zo community people, they can't come freely to the valley regions of Imphal because this is an area dominated by Methi people. So this is the consequence of the disruption. This is the consequence of violence which violates Article 19 of both people, be it of Kuki-Zo community, be it of Methi community, right? Another problem is that the center tried to ensure free movement regime. Free movement regime, we are considering this a free movement within the state of Manipur. So center, after the imposition of President's rule in February 2025, made an attempt to restore normalcy by creating a free movement zone. But what happened as soon as government created free movement zone? Violent clashes broke out which led to death of one people and injury to many people. So the current compromises that has been made in order to seek or to turn back to normalcy is that Kuki-Zo people have allowed flowing of essential goods to valleys, but only essential goods. Does it include flow of Methi people in the valley? The answer is no. And similarly, there has been no reciprocity on the parts of Methi groups to allow movement of Kuki and Zo people in the valley region. So only emergency services, only the essential goods are allowed, but not free movement of people into the other areas. So this is the current situation that plagues the Manipur. So this was the second issue that we were covering. Now let us understand the third issue that has been happening, that to calm down the tensions, what you need? You need the two sections of people to talk to each other, right? This is the most basic thing you can do. But since the violence has erupted, which has killed more than 250 people officially, although it has reduced from November 2024, both communities or some members of both communities still have or still are heavily armed, and because of this there is a possibility that even if you allow these two communities to talk to each other, it might lead to eruption of violence again. So what Center did? Center talked to each and other groups separately, not togetherly. So first of all, it tried to assuage what are the concerns, what are the problems one community faces from each other. So Center is trying to calm down the tensions. But the problem is that central government signed what is known as suspension of operation with Kuki national groups and United People Front, which is an organization representing the interest of Kuki Zo people, right? Now this pact included a very important thing that you have to remember. Since the violence have broken down, the Kuki Zo community have demanded for a separate administration that will govern only the Kuki Zo people away from Methi people. However, you need to understand, to provide for a separate administration, you need a kind of a development that would carve out a separate union territory from the state of Manipur. So, Government of India automatically did not agree to this. So, what they did, they instead signed a peace pact or kind of a ceasefire pact between the communities known as suspension of operation. And if you look at the suspension of operation text, you will find that there is a clause which honors territorial integrity of Manipur. So in effect, both of these warring organizations have agreed to a fact that they won't allow breakup of the state of Manipur, right? Or division of the state of Manipur. But this kind of a suspension of operation brought many reactions from different sections of the people. First of all, Methi people, they objected the pact, saying that government by signing this kind of a pact with Kuki Zo organization is legitimizing these insurgent groups, because these are the groups who are creating violence according to Methi people. Second argument, sorry, I almost felt like I would sneeze, sorry. Now the second argument is that the Kuki Zo people, they insisted that the demand for a separate union territory with the legislature still remains. They have agreed to suspend their operations against the union government, against the state administration, but they still haven't given up on demand. That is their demand of having a separate union territory which would help them to govern away from the Methi dominated community, right? So this is the possibility that despite there is a possibility of dialogue, still it is not materializing, because both of these parties have a very rigid position. And whenever you're negotiating for peace, whenever you're negotiating for settlement, you have to be flexible. You have to give way to other communities, right? Now this was the third problem. Now let us come back to the fourth problem, that is the political situation. Now you need to understand, we in India, we live in democracy. So for any government to have a legitimate power, it needs to be elected by the people, for the people and of the people, right? So this is the first demand in any democracy, and this is true with every part of our country. Now what happened is that the earlier Chief Minister of Manipur, Mr. C.N. Biren Singh, he resigned after the widespread opposition to his move because he was unable to control the violence, and members from Kuki Zo community felt that Biren Singh belonged from Methi group, so he did not have interest in curbing down the violence against Kuki Zo community. So as a result, he resigned from office, and because after his resignation, no other government could have been formed. So it led to imposition of precedence rule by the central government, and it continues even till today. And this started from February 2025, few days after the resignation of the CM. Now this move of, that is bringing of precedence rule, was welcomed by both Kukis as well as section of Methis initially. But now most of the valley based MLAs of the ruling coalition, both including the Naga NDA MLAs, they are demanding that there should be an elected government which would help restore the peace and tranquility in the region. Now you need to understand, central government is reluctant because the part and parcel of the process of election is that election has the possibility of further increasing the division. Election has the possibility of creating polarization. Polarization means starting or strengthening of identities of two different sides, which is quite common in election, right? So central government is afraid that it wants to create an election, it wants to conduct an election so that a democratic government is set up in Manipur, but it still can't do so because it might result into further instability. And you need to understand, after a lot of efforts, government has been able to reduce the violence in the state of Manipur, right? So this is the fourth problem. Now let us understand the biggest and probably the most determinant problem, that is the fifth problem, is the border situation in Manipur. Now, which country does Manipur shares its border with? Let me know quickly. Good morning, Lavish. Which is the country with which Manipur shares its border with? Looking for your answers. We all saw the map, right? Myanmar. And what is implemented in Myanmar and India's borders? Free movement regime, right? Free movement regime earlier was a regime which allowed movement of people within 16 kilometers of each other country without a need of visa and passport. And this was done to facilitate the movement of people who have relatives living on the other side of the border, right? Which is quite common in the northeastern region, especially among the Kukizo communities. Now, what happens because of this porous Indo-Myanmar border? It has been alleged that this porous Indo-Myanmar border has led to increase of conflict, because many security agencies have given a report that insurgent organizations who are living in Manipur, who are operating from Myanmar, they are providing logistical and armed support to the insurgents who are living in Manipur. And because of this, instead of reduction in violence, violence has increased. I told you, right? Members of both communities now have arms with themselves. How do you think arms came? It came from across the border. So the Metis concern in particular was that illegal immigration of Chin people who have ethnic ties with Kukizo communities living in Manipur, in the hill tracts of Manipur, they are providing logistical and armed support to the groups, which has led to eruption of violence. Now, to deal with this concern, government decided to scrap the free movement regime and announced fencing of border, which was unheard of in Manipur, right? Now, as a result, what happened that groups have started to oppose this measure of fencing by the government, particularly the Kukizo and Naga communities who have members of their families, bloodline relatives living across the border in Myanmar, and they share ethnic, social and trade ties across the border. So obviously their social relations would suffer, their economic relations would suffer. Similarly, a group called as United Naga Council, in order to protest this movement by the government of India, has imposed trade embargo just before the Prime Minister's visit. So this is the sum total of 5 issues that is plaguing the state of Manipur. Any doubt in this? This is a very sensitive topic. You have to be very factual about it. You don't have to be very emotional about it. If you don't understand anything, right now is the best time to ask any doubts. If you don't have any doubts, let's see how many of you are able to solve this question. Which one of these states does not share its boundary with Myanmar? Out of 5, which is the state which does not share its boundary with Myanmar? Tripura. Tripura shares its boundary with which state, which country? Well, Gaurav, for Indian states, you don't have to remember mnemonic. You should actually close your eyes and picture the map of India. You should be able to do that. Mnemonic is for other countries, right? Bangladesh, it is the country of Bangladesh with which Tripura shares its boundary. So 1, 2, 3, 4 is the right answer. Good. Now moving to the second article. This article, I guess, appeared in the newspaper few days back, but we had missed out on this article. This is very important in light of current circumstances in US politics, right? Now, this article, I've attached the screenshot of the website, but it appeared in the newspaper in the explain section only, right? Now, the RBI, it has cut holdings in the US treasury securities. Why Trump tariffs could further this trend, right? So, how is Trump determining what RBI would do? I will tell you, no need to remember. I understand, Gaurav, it happens. But with India or with Indian states, you shouldn't have to remember mnemonic. You should be able to picturize where Indian states are, even if you haven't visited that part of the country. Okay. Now, the context of this development is that the Reserve Bank of India has reduced its holding of US Treasury bills from $242 billion in June 2024 to around $227 billion in the June 2025, which is effectively a reduction of how much? $16 billion, right? Say $15 billion. Now, you must imagine RBI has a sizable portion of forex reserve. RBI roughly has $695 billion worth of forex reserve, and let us imagine out of this $695 billion, $227 billion itself is invested in a particular government security of one country, which is the United States. Why are we investing in United States government security? Don't need to worry, I'll tell you. And why has RBI reduced this investment? We'll also know today, okay? Now, first of all, let me tell you what are treasury bills. Now, treasury bills are short-term debt instruments. Debt instruments are bonds. So, whenever government issues a bond, those are called as government securities. Now, government, like you, like other people, have also short-term obligations and long-term obligations. So, whenever government borrows money for less than 1 year, that is called a short-term debt obligation. And whenever government borrows money for long-term or more than 1 year period, that is called as long-term debt instrument. Okay. Now, government issues what is known as government securities. State governments issued state development loans. These are examples of long-term debt instruments of Government of India. For Government of India, treasury bills and cash management bills are examples of the short-term debt obligation. Similarly, it is the US government also who has long-term and short-term debt obligations. So, US government can also issue treasury bills to meet its short-term debt obligation. Now, what is the three important characteristic of a government security or any bond? Can you let me know? We have covered this before. What are three most important characteristics of a debt instrument? These are called as FMC, face value. That is how much money you are lending to the government. Maturity period. Maturity is when the government would return you the money. And coupon rate is also known as rate of interest. So, these are the three characteristics that any bond or any government securities has. But what you need to understand is that treasury bill, they do not have a coupon rate. So, how will you get your money back, or how will you make money by investing in treasury security? The answer is, suppose a treasury bill is issued which has a face value of ₹100. Now, the government would take money from you as against providing you this treasury bill, but they will take money less than the face value. So, suppose government is taking 95 rupees from you by issuing 100 rupees face value worth of treasury bill. So, after the maturity, what you will get is the face value of this treasury bill back. So, effectively, your coupon rate becomes, or your rate of return becomes ₹5. So, these treasury bill are having maturity obviously less than 1 year, and treasury bills in India are issued for these many time period, and they are issued at a discount from their face value, and after maturity you get the face value back. Effectively, the difference is your rate of return on this treasury bill. Understand? Any doubt? Any doubt? Now, the next question is, why is RBI investing so much amount of money, more than $200 billion on a treasury bill of foreign government, especially that of US government? There is a very good reason for it. Why is it called as treasury bill? Well, iska answer pata hai kya hai? Why are you called Vidyashri? Why am I called Ankit? Why is Gaurav called Gaurav? No reason, right? Treasury basically means government. So, whenever government issues a bill, issues a bond, those are called as government bond or treasury bonds. Understand? How many of you have heard there is a term in Indian Parliament called as treasury benches? Any idea what is a treasury bench? The side of Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, wherever the members of the government and members of ruling party sit, those are called as treasury benches. Okay. So whenever you hear the parliamentary proceeding going on, there is a very frequent use of the term treasury benches, which is the kind of an area where the members of ruling party as well as ministers sit, right? So in parliament, there is a seating arrangement. On the right of the speaker, the prime minister and the government or the members of ruling party sit. And on the extreme left, the opposition leader sits. And from the left, you would see parties of the opposition parties, right? Got this? Vidyashri now, why is it called as treasury bill? Now tell me, which is the world's largest economy? Vidyashri replying with me as K. Okay. Is it meaning okay? Now tell me everyone, which is the world's largest economy? Which country has the world's largest military? Anyone? USA, right? So whenever you have a opportunity to invest in a government security, in which government security will you invest? Government of USA's government security or government of Pakistan's government security? Tell me, anyone? If you have an opportunity to invest in government securities of any country, in which government security will you invest? US or say a bekar country like Pakistan? US, obviously, you would invest in US's government security, right? Because US has world's largest economy. Similarly, US is backed by world's largest military. So you can understand the strength of economy, military of the government of US is the best probably across the world. So across the world, whenever central banks like RBI, central banks of other countries, they have to invest their money. They also choose to diversify their risk. They invest in government securities of government of India. Similarly, they invest in government securities of bigger countries like US, like UK, like France, like Japan, etc. Right? Similarly, RBI does it. But naturally, RBI would invest the largest amount of money in the best government security in the world, that is the US Treasury bills, right? So it has a negligible default risk. Do you think US government would run away by taking your money? Now Mehul Choksi, Vijay Mallya, Nirav Modi can run away with your money. Do you think US government or Donald Trump would run away with your money? No, right? So therefore, whenever you invest in government security, especially of that government which has world's largest economy, you have a negligible default risk. You know that the money in any case would be returned back to me because it is backed by world's largest world's oldest democracy, having the world's largest military, having the world's largest economy. And also, it is very easy for you to liquidate these government security because why do we use money? Why don't we use, say, a cowrie shell, or why don't we use pen caps as a currency? Any idea why do we use money? Or why do we use currency notes as against any other thing? Why can't I deal or buy goods and services using this pen? Why do I have to use currency notes? Any idea? Jui Gagan, issuing authority. And also, you know that if I get notes for anything, I can use this note for buying any goods and services, right? Similarly, I might want this pen, you might want this pen, but I'm not sure that a shopkeeper sitting in Karol Bagh would also want this pen. No, right? But every one of us want money. So we know money is very liquid in nature. We can similarly use money to buy any goods and services. Similar is the case with gold. Gold is a commodity that is acceptable worldwide. So even if when you don't have money, you have liquid instruments like gold, which you can easily sell off in the market and get money. Similarly, government security, especially of US government, is very much desirable across the world. Investors, central banks, they too much invest in government security, especially that of US. So these are liquid instruments and these are largest and deepest bond market in the world. Similarly, it plays a very important reserve currency note, that 60% of global reserves are held in US dollar. I told you, out of $695 billion, India continues to hold $227 billion in government securities of US government, right? So this highlights how much these government securities are important, not just for RBI, but central banks across the world. Similarly, it also can be used as a crisis buffer. Whenever any government would face what is known as balance of payment crisis, in order to get surplus dollars, they can sell off these government securities of US government easily in the market and get their payments. And also they have a very important benchmark role, that US Treasury, they are acting as a risk-free rate for global finances. So you understand now what is a benchmark? Now, whenever I peg something as a benchmark, other rates are decided by that benchmark. For example, in India, loans are linked known as external benchmark lending rate, where government of India securities, their yield are determined based on which the loan rates are decided by the bank. Similarly, in global finance, whenever borrowing of money happens from across the country, people decide on interest rates based on the prevailing rates of US government securities and their yield. Similarly, there are many key investors in US treasuries. Now, do you think India is the largest investor in government security of US? The answer is no. Who is the largest investor? Japan. Japan holds more than $1 trillion just in US government securities. This is followed by UK and China. Obviously, people would guess China, but you have to remember China is the third largest holder of US government security, not the largest. Largest is Japan. India is having the 10th largest holding of government securities of US government. Now you need to understand, why does India holds government security? India holds government security as a part of its forex reserve. Forex reserve consists of 4 different components. Foreign currency assets, where RBI holds dollars, other important foreign currencies like euro, like pound, like yen, like yuan, or like dollars. Similarly, these governments, their government securities are also held by RBI, but you need to understand which is the largest amount of government security RBI holds is the treasury bills of the government of USA. Right. So these are part of foreign currency assets. In addition to that, other items that are held in our forex reserve are gold reserves, our special drawing rights, and our reserve transposition. What are special drawing rights and reserve transposition? I've already explained it to you. Now, why is RBI reducing its holdings of US Treasury security? The reason behind is that US can technically restrict the access of any third country who might use their government security, and this happened with the case of Russia. Because the US Treasury Department's, its Office of Foreign Asset Control, has the power to block, freeze or restrict transactions which involve US financial assets like the government securities in case US imposes a sanction on this country. Case in point, in Russia, after the breaking of Ukraine-Russia war in 2022, the US and its allies froze Russia's holding of almost $300 billion in forex reserve, which included US Treasury securities. So what happened, that government of India also got afraid, including other governments of the world, and you will see there has been a trend world over that the respective central banks of the country, they are trying to reduce their holding of US Treasury bills, because theoretically US at any given time can threaten a country that they would stop or they would restrict them from using government securities, effectively blocking their use of forex reserve or a part of their forex reserve. So if government of US decided, it can restrict even the RBI of India to access these securities, prohibiting sale or even freezing transactions in these, right? So this is the reason why we are moving away from foreign securities, and all over the world there has been a trend that central banks are buying more and more gold, because gold is a very liquid commodity, right? Now let's see how many of you are able to solve this question quickly. This is a PYQ of 2013, as you can see already. Yes, option B is the right answer. Now this question. Well, Santwana, what is the meaning of your name? Rishi, your friend Shripoon Bishwas, doesn't she come on our sessions? Where is Shripoon Bishwas these days, Rishi? Consolation, okay. Santwana, yes, yes. Now I remember. The answer to this question? Santwana, okay. In Bengali, na? In Hindi, it's called as Santwana. Well, Santwana, tell me what is the right pronunciation, Rasgulla or Roshogulla? Or what is the right pronunciation, Yuvraj or Jugraj? Or Vidya or Bidya? Now, third statement to directly market. Treasury bills are offered at a discounted rate from their face value or par value, right? So this is a correct statement. So you can eliminate first 2, 3, B, C and D might be the right answer. Now the Reserve Bank of India manages the services of Government of India's security but not of any state government. Do you think first statement is true? Anyone? One of the roles that RBI plays is that it is a debt manager of the government. Which government? Both central and state government. Central government, it is automatically a debt manager, but for state government, it has to sign an agreement with the respective state government. Now, do you know, is all the state governments, is the debt manager of all the state governments RBI, or is it incorrect statement? Any idea? Well, Santwana, I'll say Rasgulla is a right pronunciation, but you disagree, I know that. It's okay. We can say whatever we want as long as we have Rasgullas. Okay? Why is it incorrect, Rishi? Well, this statement is incorrect because RBI is a debt manager of both central and state government. But if I say RBI is a debt manager of all the state governments in India, is it a correct statement or not? Well, RBI has signed agreement with all the states in India except one state, that is the state of Sikkim. RBI is not the debt manager of state of Sikkim, except all the state governments, RBI is the debt manager. Treasury bills are issued by the government of India, but no treasury bill is issued by state government. Is this statement correct? Is this statement correct? Correct. Why is it correct? Because state government only issues one kinds of government security that are called as state developmental loans, and state developmental loans are long-term debt instruments. Yes. So, second statement right, third statement right, option C is your right answer. Now, scientists, they have uncovered a hidden fresh water undersea floor. What are offshore aquifers and why are they significant? This is an article. I was looking at this article from last few days, but I saw this article did not appear in the newspaper. Did it appear, or I might have missed it? Anyone? Now, nearly 50 years after US government ship accidentally discovered fresh water under the seafloor of the country's northeast coast, international scientists have confirmed that there is a presence of massive offshore aquifers beneath the Atlantic Ocean. Right? So, what are offshore aquifers that we are going to discuss in our today's discussion? Now, offshore aquifers are bodies of porous rocks or sediments that are located beneath the seafloor, and they store what is known as fresh water. Why is this significant? Because sea has the presence of saline water or salty water, and you have deposits of fresh water beneath the seafloor, and that is a significant development. There are many studies which has estimated that 1 million cubic kilometers of fresh water lies beneath the global coast, which accounts for 10% of all terrestrial fresh water. And distributions, they have been widely distributed, identified off coast of Australia, China, North America, South Africa, and now systemically drilled off the US northeast coast. Now, whenever an important resource is discovered, India has such a bad luck that India does not have it. Be it oil, be it gold, be it diamond, the presence of all these commodities, be it lithium, be it cobalt, India does not have enough of resources. I don't know with which luck. In this aspect, India has a very bad luck, you all have to agree, right? So here also offshore aquifers, they haven't been identified nearby India's coast. Now the formation, there are many theories that say that why they have been formed. First is theory called as ice age entrapment. This theory states that fresh water sea underground whenever the sea levels were lower. So the fresh water, this seeped underground whenever the sea levels were lower, and due to the melting of ice age time period. Now in ice age, majority part of the globe was covered with ice, and when these ice melted, these fresh water might have seeped into the grounds beneath the sea waters. Second is the onshore linkages. It connected to the land aquifers which gets recharged to rainfall. So this is the second theory. First theory said that at a given point of time these waters may have been distributed. Now the second theory, onshore linkage, says that this is a continuous process, not a one-time process. Now, how are they protected or how are they safe? They are not mixing with the seawater. The reason is a cap rock layer of compacted clay. It prevents mixing of salt water, and that is an important development here. Okay. Now, why are offshore aquifers significant? First of all, going forward, there has been a report that India by 2030 would suffer from what is called as water stressed condition. And there is a report of Niti Aayog that states that demand of fresh water in India would surpass the supply of fresh water in India. Any idea where or which kind of an activity do we use fresh water a lot? Any idea? Can you guess? Industrial use, human consumption, or agriculture. Out of these three, which is the activity that uses a lot of fresh water in India? Agriculture. Any idea how much is the percentage of fresh water used by agriculture sector? Yes, we agree on agriculture, but any idea how much is the percentage of fresh water used by agriculture? Industrial use is second. First is agriculture. By far it is first. You know, 85% of India's fresh water is used for agriculture only. And despite this water stress condition, what are the crops we are growing? Rice, sugarcane. We are not just growing them, we are also exporting them to other countries. So this has given India the tag that India is a net exporter of water. On the other hand, China is very smart. You know what China does? It requires a lot of rice, but it does not produce a lot of rice. Yes, it is the world's largest producer, but still it is not able to meet the domestic demand of rice. So China, it imports rice. So in that regard, you can say China is a net importer of water. And see us Indians, what we are doing, we are using our freshwater resources as much as 85% of it for agricultural purposes. And not just that, we are growing rice and sugarcane, which are water intensive crops, and we are sending them abroad. Now, climate adaptation. Climate adaptation brings you a logic that you need to create a freshwater buffer in case droughts happen, in case there is a changing rainfall pattern and there is a glacial melting disruption, which is a steady supplier of fresh water. So in case these patterns become erratic, you need to have a buffer created for your freshwater reserves, and therefore these offshore aquifers can be harnessed to get the fresh waters. Similarly, these are strategic resources. Countries who have access, they may reduce dependence on overexploited land aquifers and desalinization plant. Now, what is more prevalent in the northwestern part of our country, which is a major agricultural belt in India, that the supply of fresh water through canal and rivers is less. So farmers in Punjab, farmers in Western UP and Haryana, they rely on groundwater through pumping of groundwater. And because of this, there is a problem of salt salinization in India's northwestern part. And this is because of overuse of groundwater resources. So therefore, countries who are able to find these offshore aquifers, they may reduce their use of groundwater resources. Another reason is that they have sustainable potential. If renewable, which is fed by land aquifers, they are provided for long-term freshwater source. Second aspect is global equity. It may benefit coastal and island nations more, which has a limited amount of fresh water. Have you heard that many coastal states like Mauritius, Maldives, they very frequently face water crisis, especially at the time when their plant or desalinization plants, they stop working or they go out of order. There was this problem in Maldives where they ran out of fresh water, and Indian government, Indian Air Force has to drop fresh waters using military planes in Maldives just so as to ensure the survival of people in Maldives. And this is a very common problem in island nation. Whenever you go to these island nations, whenever you go to buy water, you will realize the water is very expensive there, right? Now, research value, it enhances the understanding of Earth's hydrological cycle and climate history. So we are able to understand much more how the Earth's geography is working. Now, offshore aquifers 150 years back was unheard of. Now, you know, we have a significant amount of deposits, as much as 10% of total fresh water available, that are available in the oceans in these aquifers, right? So this is the importance of ocean aquifers. Now, tell me the correct answer to this question. Studies have suggested that offshore aquifers account for nearly 10% of world's terrestrial freshwater, not 50. So second is incorrect, and just by marking the second statement incorrect, you can rightly say option C is the right answer. Yes. Now we have launched a September batch which will start from 20th of September. You can still take admissions. Time is not very late right now. If you start preparing right now diligently, you can clear your exams next year. But you need help. That is almost necessary, and for that you can opt for a resolution plus batches on StudyIQ. Please remember, these are offered at 26,999 only if you use the code ATS Live, and these will begin from 20th of September. Okay. Yuvraj, you were asking something? You're asking something, Yuvraj? Yuvaraj. Well, 3 more articles are left. What I'll do is that we'll cover Sri Narayana Guru and Acharya Vinoba Bhave on Monday, and I will record the extradition video and get it uploaded, right? Extradition video is very important. This we can cover on Monday. Okay? Yes, this is a model question which I have curated on UPSC pattern. Yes, Yuvraj. So, okay, you can download the notes from the channel ATS Live. In the meantime, I'll get the video of extradition recorded and get it uploaded, right? So, you can download the notes from here. We'll see each other on Monday, hopefully, right? So, have a good weekend, everyone.